So welcome, welcome. I love that you're all showing up to a webinar about loneliness. Are we all agreed that we're here to a webinar called Feeling Lonely? Let's reclaim our sense of connection. And it feels really delightful to me that so many people are willing to show up, because some people feel shame or grief or difficulty around loneliness. So I actually didn't know if anyone was going to show up. And then we actually got our largest record attendance to any of our webinars. 90 people showed up. And so the fact that you're here in person means a lot to me. It shows that you're really brave. You're interested in making the world a better place. You're interested in being loving people. And you're willing to show your face and say, yeah, let's do something about loneliness. So thank you for being here. And hi, Jeannie. So good to see you. So Kiara, would you go ahead and share the presentation and we'll get started. Kiara, I'm not seeing your screen yet. There we go. There we go. So here we are together, wanting to reclaim connection. And that's something that we really love to do at Awaken Coach Institute. Anybody who's been part of our community, hi Jacinta, I think would say that it is really a place of love and belonging. There's no need to fit in. There's no need to try to be different from you, the way you already are, to be part of our community. And so the men and women and non-binary folks who show up, we come because we're interested in community and connection. So Kiara, can you go to the next slide? So I want to introduce myself really quickly. Most of you know me somewhat, but what I would like to say is my purpose for being here on earth is to create communities of grace. And so I know that I'm doing the right thing whenever I'm doing something that creates more belonging, more community, more love and acceptance, more bravery. And so I try to do that every moment of every day. And that's how I know that I'm on the right path. And so I'm doing that hopefully here with you in this webinar. And that's certainly why I chose to create Awaken Coach Institute. Loneliness was something that has been part of my life. And it's really important to me that people feel like they belong here and that I create that. And so I'm really happy to be creating that with you. So Kiara, next slide. And so as promised, if you are watching the replay, that's because we promised to send you a replay. And we'll also send you the presentation, because I know that when you receive a lot of new information or some, quite a few different tips that you can use, it can be good sometimes to have something to look at afterwards. Next, Kiara. And so there's a lot of data about loneliness. There's been some really big studies that have happened since the pandemic, because loneliness has gotten to be epidemic proportions. I think we've all felt it for different reasons, whether we've experienced grief and loss, even deaths of people around us, or just being isolated. It's really been a big part of our world community. And so I just want us to recognize that it's really worth doing something about. It's affected me kind of in a longer term, because I've been a global nomad for more than 20 years. And then also even before that, I've been in communities where there's a lot of neurodivergence in different ways. There's been bullying in my life. There's been a lot of times when I just felt like the odd one out. And that has really shaped my life to be somebody that wants to make sure that no matter who you are, you're allowed to be here, and that you are loved and you're valuable and you're important. And so next, Kiara. And there's a lot around loneliness. So some people think, well, it's because I don't have any friends, or because I'm different, or I don't get invited to things, or I just feel sad or not understood. And then there's also some research, next slide, Kiara, that gives us a bit more information about the kinds of loneliness that we can experience. And so I want us to get to a point where we can understand, what is it like for me to be lonely, and because you want to be able to do something about it, right? And not just kind of be stuck with it or alone with it. And so there's actually research around 3 main types of loneliness, and each one of us will have different levels of each of them. So the first one is social loneliness. Like, do you have people that you can talk to every day? And interestingly enough, the research is showing that, in the past, people thought that the social loneliness was more related to elderly folks who were shut into their homes, who didn't get to see a lot of people, or maybe they needed a caregiver to come once or twice a week. And now what we're seeing is that the main demographic for this kind of loneliness is equally the 16 to 24-year-old crowd, that there are young people, middle-aged people, older people, we're all just feeling it. And especially people who haven't been allowed to be in school with their friends. It's now something that we're experiencing at all ages. And the other one, the second one, is emotional loneliness. Like, you might see people, but maybe you're lonely in your marriage or with your cat. Like, maybe you have the kind of cat that is not like Shirley's cat, being all friendly and coming in and joining us here, but maybe yours is a little touchy and goes off in the corner and doesn't really like to cuddle that much. And so it could be that a person that you live with is just not able to listen to you or connect with you, and that you just feel like you're not getting what you need in a really intimate relationship. And then the third one is just this collective, do you get any eye contact when you go to the grocery store? Do you see people? Maybe do you go out biking and say hello to 5 people along the path? Do you walk down a canal and you kind of recognize who your neighbors are as you're walking along? And so for each person, we're going to have different levels of each of the 3 of these that we need. So for example, in my family, I'm the only extrovert. So I get really happy and jazzed right now doing a webinar, because I'm like, yay, there's people here. We're all together. This is so much fun. Whereas most of my other family members would be like, please leave me alone. Let's have one-on-one chats. And so as a coach, I can spend, 6 or 7 hours a day sometimes in one-on-one conversations, but I'm still feeling lonely because I want to have my a little party, get together, 6 or 8 people come over for dinner. And so I'm missing that more group kind of thing. The collective thing, my husband and I both really like biking. And so we actually separate and take different bike routes. We'll leave the house together, and then I'll go down a path where I know that I'm going to see a lot of people. And just there's something about that little, you look each other in the eye, you say bonjour, and kind of weaving in and out of each other's space, that just makes me feel really happy. And he gets very annoyed, and he's like, I need my quiet space. I need several hours of quiet space a day. And when I go on a bike ride, I would like to be alone in the forest, and I would feel very happy if I saw a deer and a rabbit today. instead and didn't have to weave my bike around people or avoid people. So the key is to kind of think of it at all these different levels and just to let yourself want and need what you actually want and need, and not let it be the same as the introvert or the extrovert or the other person in your life who thinks you should be fine if you had Zoom calls today, or you should be fine if you had this or that happen in your life. It's yourself and you're unique. And so you're allowed to recognize what makes you feel happy and what makes you feel like you've had good contact with people. All right. And so next slide, Kara, there's a lot of false beliefs that people have around loneliness as well. And some of these I think I had a belief for a long time, especially from really earlier years when I felt really out of it or ostracized or different from people in in school as a kid. I really took on this belief that I'm not likable. People don't like to be with me, which is a really hard belief to hold on to. And it wasn't till I was an adult that I could look back on those years and, talk to some of those little kids who are, in 6th grade or 12 years old or 13 years old and find out, what, all of them felt lonely sometimes. Some of the most popular kids felt lonely sometimes. And so just, in my 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, just looking back and saying, yeah, I was not uniquely alone. It's a thing that happens. And so another false belief can be like loneliness means that you're by yourself, which is not necessarily true. There's many times that I'm by myself and love it. And other times that I've gone out dancing with a group of people and I just feel awkward and sad the whole night because I just feel awkward and sad, even if there's 50 people around me in the room. And so just letting yourself say, this is me, and this is okay. This is the way I feel right now. And just taking off that layer of judgment or thinking that it's personal. So next slide, Kiara. I'd love it if you'd be willing to, since we're all here in the room together, if you'd be willing to type in the chat, I feel lonely when, and let's just see, and maybe some of us can put heart emojis up, heart reactions, or say, yeah, me too, in the comments when somebody says, I feel lonely when I'm in the same room with my partner and they're on their phone, or I feel lonely when I've gone for 2 days without talking to somebody, or I feel lonely when whatever it is. Let's see if we can just see what are human beings feeling lonely about. And the reason I'm asking us to be brave here and do that is because step one in becoming less lonely is that relief that we feel when our insides match our outsides and we're allowed to say, yeah, this is what it's like for me. And that can be okay. And so we've got in the chat that, some of us feel lonely when they don't get to talk to their family, or when they don't feel connected to people or with their partner. And can we just see some hands raised, like when you're struggling and nobody notices, like every one of those comments, I'm right there with you. I've experienced all of those before, and I'm guessing there's not a single one of those where you're the only one. That just is a part of being human. That does feel lonely. You are correct. Living alone and staying indoors can be very lonely. I get that. And so I just want to appreciate you and thank you all. oh man, looking at happy group photos on social media, it's so funny. Like I can get jealous of people and lonely even when I have my friends around, just because comparing to other people's happiest moments is really a downer. Comparing yourself to people, not feeling seen and heard. Like I just want us all, like jazz hands. Every one of these are so relatable. Comparing yourself with other people, that is exactly what we human beings feel lonely about. Okay, and so how does that feel to have just named it and validated it? Said, yeah, that's just the truth. I do feel lonely in this relationship, or I do feel lonely alone. I do feel lonely in a group or comparing. And that's just human. Okay. Kara, can we go to the next slide? And so once we've done that, and I just thank you for your courage in saying those things. Once you've done that and just said that's the truth and it's okay and that's human, remind yourself that you do have connections, because I don't know if any of you know of Martin Seligman's work on the 3 Ps. You know, if you want to have catastrophic thinking, the best way to do that is to if you really want to get depressed, start thinking this is personal to me, no one else feels this way, this is permanent and it's pervasive. And so we're knocking down or debunking the idea that this is pervasive here. Okay, so even if you're like excruciatingly lonely a lot of the time, let's find out, where is that little piece that's okay? Where is it that I do receive love and support? Where are the times that I do have connections already? And so I'd love it if we just continue to use the chat and just say, here's some ways. You know what? My husband actually brought me a cappuccino the other day when I was really jet lagged and feeling a bit grouchy and sleepy. You know, what are some ways that your friends, your family, your colleagues, your cat, your neighbor down the street have actually noticed you, paid attention to you? Yeah, people help us process breakups. Like everybody likes to do that. You know, if you're having a down day, everybody likes to be the person who's the helper. And so why not let them, right? Let me process. Friends do text to chat. I am not super good at that, but I do have friends who are really good at remembering to text. Yeah, Jacinta's friends helped when she had guests, which can be a big deal, doing all that cooking and stuff. Kiara's partner went out to get some chocolate. A friend followed up with Elaine. So much. Now, what does that do to your loneliness? To admit that, yes, I'm human. I do feel lonely sometimes. And I do have some connections. I do have people who pay attention and are kind to me. Neighbors who stop and call, family chats that happen. And just noticing what that does inside of you to recognize, yeah, I don't know how many of you like call and invite other people to lunch, but it sure is nice to get invited by someone else. And so they might have been feeling lonely too, and yet they were willing to be brave and reach out or take the time to write that note of appreciation, that letter, right? Thank you so much for sharing all these things. It's so encouraging for people watching the replay as well. And so let's go to the next slide, Kiara. And I think what we're noticing already is that everyone who showed up here, everyone who's watching the replay, and a whole lot of other people too, who've reached out to me when they heard we were doing this loneliness webinar, have said, yeah, we are lonely sometimes. And so just noticing that you're never alone when you feel lonely, because so many other people are having the exact same experience. And it really is in the millions or even billions at this point in time. And so just repeat after me in your heart. It's normal to feel lonely sometimes. I am not alone in feeling lonely. This is part of life. This is a moment of suffering. It will pass, and it is what it is right now. Next slide, Kiara. And so tip number 4, and by the way, these are all kind of medically, scientifically researched options that actually work. And so any of these things that we've done so far do help alleviate loneliness, and so does appreciation of yourself. Okay. And so we did a whole other webinar walking people through the RAIN technique, but I can just summarize it really briefly right now. And what it is just really being with yourself. And so if you're having an emotion, like let's say it's sadness or grief or despair or however else you want to call it, you're having a pity party or whatever else is going on, you can walk yourself through a 4-step process of recognizing, which we did in step 1, allowing. So not trying to push it away, but just saying, you know what, emotions actually go through the body chemically in 90 seconds. So no matter how bad you think the emotion is going to be, if you actually let yourself feel it, or even have a good cry, it will pass through you and move on. Emotions are visitors. They are not long-term guests once you allow yourself to feel them and welcome them. And so then when an emotion does go through your body, you can investigate it and make it your friend. And so what we like to do at Awaken Coach Institute when we work with emotions is sometimes we notice, what's the size of this? Sometimes people have this faulty imagination that their emotion is much bigger than they are. And that's just not true. People who are panicking or afraid or angry or sad, sometimes, you know, even for myself, I used to draw a picture of my body inside a big, huge teardrop when I wanted to have a big pity party and think, oh, this sadness is so much bigger than me. And what we can do is use your hands to play with the imagination. And sometimes I'll ask coaching clients, what happens if you make that emotion the size that you want it to be? And a lot of times the size people want it to be, when they get it to the right size, it's quite small. And then we can set that emotion to the side and maybe set it on a desk somewhere and take a look at it and ask it lots of questions. So, hey, loneliness, hey, sadness, hey, little buddy, I'm the boss of me. You're my little friend. You are not bigger than me. Tell me how you feel over there. What's the weather report? What's your favorite song? What's your favorite bedtime story? Get to know it a little bit and nurture it. And so if it is what seems like a big, big feeling, you can tell it thank you, which is usually the last thing we want to do. We often try to push these things away, not admit that we're lonely, not admit whatever it is, not admit shame or fear. And so instead of pushing it away, we can be the ones who nurture that emotion. Say, thank you so much. What is it you're trying to tell me? And so once we've befriended it, thanked it, asked it its favorite bedtime story, its favorite song, we can maybe invite it back into our life in its appropriate size and receive the message that it has for us. And so maybe that message is asking us to do something about it. If there is a sad, if there is a lonely, maybe you don't have to stay the way things are right now. Maybe you can take some action. And so next slide, Kiara, we're going to talk about some of those things that you can actually do, which are proven to help. And so I have a perfect example of this one. Number 5 here is to spend time in nature. And so one of my kids has just recently moved to a different country. And so, as happens with most people when you move to a different country, she's feeling very lonely. And so she had a couple of good cries and, when is this ever going to go away? It's so hard to transition, which it is. And it was really hard to be with her new roommate who, it just wasn't the easiest relationship right off the bat. And so she just got a little stuck. And I said, well, where would be a good place for you to do your studying tonight that would feel like you were reconnected with yourself? And so she ended up deciding to go outside and study under a tree. And there's just something that happens. I don't know if any of you like walking in the forest, but there's something that goes on when you recognize that you're part of nature. You just can't be alone in nature. There's living things everywhere you look. Those trees have been around for a long time. They're all part of an ecosystem that you're part of. And so my daughter went out there, studied under a tree. Next thing you knew, there was a bunny that jumped across the field. And then there was a little baby deer with its little spots that just came and looked at her, and she looked at it. And there's just a sense of spaciousness when you are a creature among creatures, and you recognize somehow you can't be alone. Everything is part of it. And I don't know how many of you know the poem Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. And the geese are announcing over and over your place in the family of things. Because when you're out in nature, you do recognize you do have a place in the family of things. Everyone does. And someone was asking if there's time for questions. Would this be a good time for questions? We can also ask them at the end, but I'd love to hear. Anyone have a question you'd like to ask now? Either out loud or in the chat.
I have a question. My name's Chris. So when you were talking to the fourth point before the slide, you're talking about the size of the emotion and where. And I was thinking, is it good to ask ourselves where we feel it, or and then on top of that question, how do you manage it when you're simultaneously feeling really intense physical symptoms?
Yeah, well, and the body is a great friend. In fact, it's hard to not feel physical symptoms when you feel emotional symptoms because they are the exact same thing. The parts of the brain and the nervous system that light up with physical pain and with emotional pain are identical. And so those are the same. There isn't a difference between, lower back pain and anxiety or wherever it shows up. It's just the mind-body system is connected. And so if you do feel physical chronic pain, it can be really healing and helpful to notice that, if it's chronic, it's very likely to be emotional pain, assuming you've gone to the doctor and checked it out and seen like things are not necessarily, broken limbs or something that are causing acute pain, but there is emotional pain. And so there's a person named John Kabat-Zinn and many others who do body scan meditations. And so John Kabat-Zinn actually started doing body scans with terminal cancer patients and was able to reduce their pain by 75% just by having them be aware of intensity in their body and breathing with it and being okay with whatever sensations they were feeling, and potentially renaming them as heat or intensity or tingling or heaviness rather than calling it pain. And then also just offering this rain technique of acceptance and allowance and nurturing. Like the way that you are feeling is the way you are feeling right now, and accepting it, not fighting it, and thanking it for the message that it's giving you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for asking, Chris. It's important stuff. Any other questions before we go on? Okay, so Kiara, I think we're ready for the 6th point. And so we're again in this taking action. So once we've recognized it, allowed it, just been okay, like, you know what, this happens sometimes. It's not forever. It's not just me. It's not all pervasive. This is happening. This is a moment of suffering. In the same way that we love to receive little notes or eye contact or the things that make you feel most happy, you can actually be the first. Okay, so be the one who ends the cycle. So this one, a few months ago, I was really feeling quite lonely. It was really hard. I've been living in a different country for 5 years, but, we moved to this new house right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so I hadn't even met my neighbors yet when we all went into lockdown. And so I was feeling just like, this is hard. And kind of wondering, like, how come more people don't care? How come more people aren't reaching out to me? Where are my love notes? Where are my things? And at some point I was like, you know what? This grouchiness is my grouchiness. And so what am I going to do about it? And so I started taking responsibility. And so I thought, what are the best things for me to do? And I really love it when people ask me, do you want to go to the pool on Friday? Or do you want to go to that, concert on Saturday night? And it makes me feel great. And so I thought, I don't tend to be the person who does the inviting a lot, but I'm like, I can do that. And so I put on my calendar every Friday at 1:30, I get this little reminder saying, call a friend, schedule a date. And so that was hard at first because I'm like, I don't have any friends. I'm so lonely. But I went to point to, like, okay, there are people who connect with me. There must be possibilities. And so every Friday, I just kind of racked my brain. I'm like, okay, there are. Sometimes my friend Annie texts me. Sometimes my friend Angela texts me. I was on this coaching group where we all get together once a month, and one of the coaches lives 10 minutes from my house. And so why don't I, it's a little bit nervous because she's never reached out to me. She doesn't know who I am, but I happen to hear that she lives in Basel, and what if she'd want to go get a cup of coffee? And so every Friday, I put it in my calendar and I do reach out to at least one person. And it's made such a huge difference because people are like, oh man, I thought you were so popular. You're always doing stuff. You have so many friends. And, I see what you put on Facebook and it just looks like everything is so happy and beautiful for you. I never would have reached out to you, but like, you're one of those people that reaches out. I'm like, thank you for projecting all these thoughts of yours onto me. I appreciate that. But no, I'm just as human as everybody else, and I also need contact. And so why don't I be the one who goes out of my way to take responsibility for my own loneliness and take some action, which is not easy to do when you're lonely, because loneliness is isolating, and can be shame producing, and it can be making you be the opposite of wanting to reach out. It can be kind of embarrassing. But it has made a big difference for me. And so I've had at least a friend contact at least once a week ever since I started telling myself, this is my job to take responsibility for this and do it. And I've met new people because I didn't have a lot of close contacts and close friends. And so it takes some work, especially when you're in a different country or in a new town, to say, I'm gonna say hi to that person, or I'm gonna make that call to someone who just arrived here from Turkey, or whatever it is, and go ahead and do it. And I found that people really appreciate it. When you do go out and have that coffee, they're like, oh, thank you so much. That's so kind of you for reaching out. We're all kind of waiting for someone else to do it. What if we're the ones to do it? And it'll be reciprocated soon enough. So next point is number 7. This one is just, it's so easy, and yet it can feel so awkward. Like how many of you give yourselves a hug? Like that takes a little practice. I can feel like, what am I talking to myself? Am I is it gotten that bad? But no, even if you have tons of friends around you, the person whose love matters the most is your own. And there's just something about this space right here, that heart center, where I'm doing it right now. Just put a hand on your heart, and what can happen is this is sort of your gratitude and joy center. And if you just allow yourself to breathe in a little bit of gratitude and connect with that really caring part of yourself, sometimes even both hands. And you wouldn't be alive today if you hadn't had a lot of physical touch in your life, because that's just what it takes for people to grow and thrive as little people. So I'm convinced that each one of us has received a hug or received a kind touch at some point in our lives. And so the best thing we can do is take responsibility. It can be really nice if you have someone else that you can hug on a regular basis, or a pet or something. But even if you are living by yourself, there are really nice ways to hold yourself and remind yourself that you're okay inside your own skin. And so Dr. Peter Levine has some other, and there's a lot of people who have researched good ways of touching yourself. One of them is to put your right hand under your left armpit and your left hand on your right shoulder. And it's kind of weird, but it actually does something. It reminds you, I'm here inside my own skin, and I'm contained, and I'm bigger than any emotion that might be going through me. And so you can do these motions that help you to feel cared for, calm, secure. And there might even be some kind thoughts that you tell yourself while you're doing that, and just say, I'm such a lovable person right here, right now. Yes, I am a human. Yes, I have been going through a rough time, and I'm really a lovable person. I'm so grateful for my life. Some people like to put a hand, this is when I like, put a hand on the heart and a hand on the face at the same time, and just the connection between the head and the heart. Other people prefer a hand on the belly, have a really soft belly and breathe down to there while having a hand on the heart. And it's just connecting these different, connect the head and the heart, or connect the heart and the gut, and remind yourself, it's okay to relax into rest and digest mode. It's okay to have a little cry if I need to. It's okay to contain myself with whatever I might be feeling. And so let yourself do that. Who's gonna know or care that you're being kind to yourself? You will know, and you will care. And it's going to make a difference, and it's going to resource you to be able to be that much more yourself out there. Next slide, Kiara. Which brings us to showing up as your full self, because there's nothing that saps your energy more than having to hide who you are. And so to the extent that your insides and your outsides are separated and don't match is to the extent you're going to be having a lot of energy going down the drain. And so what you want is to find the people and the places where you can show up as you. And if you do show up and say, hey, I'm having a sad today, man, I'm just recognizing I've been lonely for a while and I'm kind of stuck. I don't know what to do about it. It's okay to find the friends who let you say some of those things. And it doesn't mean that you always have to be the one who breaks down and goes into tears and becomes the basket case and whatever. That's not what that means. It means that if you consistently allow yourself to ask for what you need, and you don't have to be this strong and mighty person wearing a red cape going around being the only one to do the acts of kindness. Like, yes, do the acts of kindness and receive what you need from others and let them know what you need. So let it be really reciprocal. And there's something about showing up and saying, this is what's going on with me, that makes it okay for other people. And it sure is relaxing and nice to know that, yeah, other people are going through the same thing. And you can feel a lot happier when people are miserable together. It ends up not being quite so miserable. Sometimes you can have a really good belly laugh at a time like that. It's just such a relief to know this just happens. We're part of community. It's okay to show up as me. I don't have to pretend to be my TikTok version of myself all the time. I can be me and still be loved, because I have weaknesses and strengths, and it's all good. Next slide, Kiara. And so our next kind of action-oriented thing that we would recommend is that you use your hands. The way from, the head to the heart is through the hands. That's what we say. If there's something that you think, yeah, I could do something that wouldn't make me feel so lonely, but your heart doesn't quite believe it yet, go out there and make something. And so this could be writing a song. Singing is fantastic. It's a great vagus nerve massage, especially if you have lots of different tonalities. Write a song, sing a song, paint something, get some, especially cross body movements. If you could do a really big, messy painting, maybe some finger painting, and get your arm going back left to right on both sides. Maybe a sculpture. I mean, just getting your hands in some clay. Maybe make a big, angry, sad, wild warrior. Whatever, come up with something that you want to express about your emotions, about the way things feel to you right now. Can be just about anything. So I'd love to see in the chat, what are your favorite creative outlets? Do you do haikus and limericks? Do you like to bend wire into shapes and put seashells on them? Do you collect driftwood? Do you use cat footprints to make collages? I'm sure everybody's got some hidden talent that maybe it's time to do that. Yeah, photography is lovely. And sometimes just getting out there to do an artist date with yourself, as Julia Cameron would say, where you don't bring a lot of words with you, but you just allow yourself to really experience fully with, all of your senses, what you're creating. Gardening is so wonderful and relaxing. So yes, Karen, creating in your garden. So any of those things that you love to do and you love to do it, set a timer for 10 minutes. Like, let it be a really little thing and watch yourself get in the zone. You might stay doing that thing longer than you expected just because you're enjoying it. Okay, next slide, Kiara. And so social media is sort of a blessing and a curse. For me, I actually go on Facebook every day, I would say. It's rare for me to miss a day. And I really enjoy it. I find it's like, oh, this is what's going on. And I like to say nice things on Facebook and encouraging words, sometimes write down my thoughts. I get a little creativity. Sometimes I'll put a favorite image or something. I do try to make sure my insides match my outsides. I don't try to use it as a way to pretend I'm something that I'm not, hopefully most of the time. And so for me, it's okay. But sometimes I do get to like scrolling and I do notice like, this is not cool anymore. And so just being aware of that. If it is a place where you're comparing yourself to others, or you're like, oh, everybody else is having a party and I'm just sitting here by myself, then just be aware. What is that thing being used for? What amount of time per day or per week is actually life-giving to you, and what is not, and make your choices based on what you're noticing about yourself. And if there are people on there where you're like, every time I see that person posting about her, perfectly gorgeous bikini wearing 16-year-old who just won the Olympic medal, I just don't feel that great. Maybe take a pause from that perfect person for a little while and look at people who you actually really enjoy connecting to. They're not going to know or care if you're not looking at their prize-winning loved ones anymore. So number 11, Kiara. So sometimes it's the old friends. We talked a little bit about reach out to the people who are near you, hold the door for someone, the people in proximity, get in touch. But you know what? Reconnecting with old friends is really grounding. And this happened to me recently. I have a friend in Washington, D.C. who I was just in town for a very brief amount of time, but she said, hey, can I take you to the airport on your way out? I just really want to see you, even if it's just driving you to the airport. And she stopped by her house on our way to the airport, and she said, I just want to show you something real quick. And I've seen her maybe twice in 20 years. But she showed me this little basement apartment she had built. And she said, Christy, if anything ever happened to Ben, I just want you to know you have a home. I actually created this apartment with you in mind. I decorated it the way I think you would love it, because I want you to know you have a home in DC if the worst should ever happen. And my gosh, I cried. I cried getting on the plane. I was like, who does something that kind and expresses that much love? Old friends do. That's who. Whether you've seen them in 20 years or not, there are people that you have known in your life, whether it was your third grade teacher or whether it was whoever, there are people who have breathed life into you, or you would not be here. I just know it. And so even if you can't think of anybody right now in your life, there are people who have loved you into life, and they would really love to hear from you. So you can do what it takes to find them and tell them what they've meant to you. Say that kind word, and you know what? It makes you feel wonderful to do that. It's very moving. Next slide, Kiara. And so, you know what? If all these actions feel a little overwhelming, first of all, you don't have to do them all. We're going to send you the slides. You can pick the ones that are like, absolutely, I'm going to do nature. I can do a deer. I don't think I can write a love letter to somebody I haven't seen in 30 years. Like, whatever it is for you, do that. Maybe you have an idea that we haven't even put on here yet. Just do the ones that you want to do, the ones that feel good to you. And you know what? If you need to go take a nap afterwards, that's okay too. So challenge yourself, do a stretch goal, and then be really kind to yourself and appreciative. Like, I did that. I organized a D&D group for my friends, and that took some creativity to design the world that they're going to play in. And that was pretty awesome. And that was enough for today. Maybe I'm just going to go watch a movie or something. So do what you can. Give yourself tons of grace. And then the next day, see how much better you feel. See how much more you can do. Countering shame, that really goes back to that very first slide, because the thing with shame is shame appears to be this big ugly dragon that's so overwhelming, and it cannot survive even one drop of empathy. It's like the Wicked Witch of the West, who just like, she melts when there's one drop of empathy. And so the best thing for shame is to speak up and be very careful who you speak up to. Speak up to the 1, 2, 3 people in your life who you know will respond with empathy, who they generally do that. And you can even say, hey, I'm looking for a little empathy right now. I just need somebody to understand me. And I'm a little bit ashamed to talk about this because you know what? Loneliness feels shameful to me right now, but I'm feeling lonely. And that one buddy gives you a good hug and says, oh man, yeah, this has been rough. It takes a huge edge off the shame. And the other thing that takes the edge off is that first point of just allowing yourself to say it. If you stop judging yourself and you have one other person who's not judging you, shame cannot survive. And just keep doing that until the shame is like, sorry, my friend, I was trying to protect you. Didn't do it in a very friendly way. I'll do better next time. Empathy is way stronger than shame. And so use it, use it, use it. All right. Next slide, Kiara. And so we have a bonus tip, which is, you know, coaches, counselors, good friends. There are people who are trained to listen really well and who are not going to get shocked by anybody's emotions. And so there is definitely a time. I certainly always have a coach because I believe coaching works. I am a coach, but that doesn't mean I don't need them myself. In fact, every good coach has a coach, either peer coach or somebody that they hire. And that's just a good idea for all of us. It helps get you out of yourself and into a new space. So next slide, Kiara. So if you are really wanting to be brave, to be loving, to make the world a better place for yourself and for people that you love, we would love to welcome you to Awaken. So next slide. I just want to tell you about our offerings that are coming up for you. So I just love to create communities of grace, and I love for people to feel welcomed and included exactly the way you are right now without anybody having to fix or change you, which is what coaching is about. And the wonderful thing is that when you join our course, you actually come away with a professional coaching certification so that you can be a professional coach. And to me, that's just a bonus. Like you get goodness, love, all the good things in your life. You're a better listener. You create more bravery in the world. And bonus, you get something that's going to enhance your career or that's going to give you an entirely new profession you can move into if you want to. So we're just going to speed through these next few slides, Kiara, because we only have 3 more minutes. And I will stay longer for those who want to ask questions. But you do come out of our coach training transformed for yourself and for the people you love. Next slide, Kiara. And, our graduates say a lot of good things. If there are any grads in here right now who would like to say a word about the program, I would love to hear from you. No pressure. I do not need to put you on the spot, but I do notice there is an alumni of the program here. If you would like to speak, that would be fine. like, are you wanting to or not? It's totally cool. Karen, go ahead.
I took Christy's course, graduated in the spring of 2021, and it was transformational for me personally. Aside from the coaching certificate, which has just been incredible. Um, but I also want to say that just being in that safe space with others and being vulnerable with people who are also vulnerable has just kind of continued this movement in my life of growing. And I don't know, it's so, yeah, it's just been a beautiful experience that just kind of, it's that thing that just keeps on giving, I guess you could say. So yeah, I would encourage anyone to do that, to take the course, even if it's just for yourself.
Thank you, Karen. And we just love you, and we love how you become a wonderful group coach and what you're doing in the world with the lovelies who get to benefit from you. And our graduates like would definitely agree with you that it is long term. There are friendships that last over the years, and that's what we want for you. So Kiara, can you go to slide 26? Just kind of skip ahead a little bit. I just wanted to let you know that yes, our grads do say good things about the program, and we have one starting on September 2nd. And so we would love to invite you. Your next step would really just to be to email me, or you can look at our website and see how to submit your application. So what we do is we meet every Friday between September and the end of December. And we also have an in-person cohort in Kenya. If any of you feel like being extra brave and just jumping on an airplane and going to Kenya, we have that one going on too. So September, every Friday for 16 weeks, for Kenya, we condense it into a 2-week program. We would love to see you there. We would love to have you part of our community and getting to experience love and grace and goodness on a regular basis that will last, and that will leave you with a professional coaching certification. So Kiara, you can stop sharing the slides now. And I'd love to hear if there are any questions about the content we had today. We are at time, so you're free to go if it's time for you to go. And if you'd like to stay longer, bye Karen. I'm happy to talk with you.